and welcome to That Squirrel Speaks. Today is Friday, August 23rd, and I'm Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry and the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. Oh my goodness, thanks for coming over for a visit. It's so delightful to have you. Are you busy? Do things feel chaotic? Are you sending humans back to school? Are you gearing up for all of your like late summer preserving? Are you treading water furiously? I feel you, friends. I feel you. I don't know if I think I did all of those things. Except the canning, the preserving. I've really slacked off. I brought in I have not even picked beans, which just never happens. Like usually when I'm growing green beans, I'm like out there like every day looking to see if there's a bean. This year I just was like, oh, I wonder if there are beans out there. And I picked like a big mess of beans and I was like, this isn't enough to preserve. We'll just eat these. Because I planted my beans a little bit later than normal this year. And I'm not really sure why. I mean, part of it's because if you plant them early, they never go very well because they don't germinate until it's actually quite warm. And yet they don't, I don't know, for some reason, nobody ever transplants beans. So like, I don't know if there's a reason you can't. Like there's certain things you don't want to transplant, like, and I say transplant, like I mean start indoors and move outdoors. Things like carrots, you don't want to do that because like you can't disturb their like growth pattern. But I don't understand. I think maybe beans are just like so salt of the earth that like feeling like planting them indoors ahead of time is like fussy. But when you're a person who really loves green beans, maybe I should just do that next year. Have you ever done that? Do you plant your runner beans indoors ahead of time? Because I mean, theoretically, it's not like there's a finite crop. Like a bush bean, I could see why you wouldn't want to start those necessarily indoors because like they're gonna grow and produce and be done. I mean, you could if you wanted to like stagger your harvests, but like theoretically, beans will just produce until like they can't, until it gets too cold or what have you. So it seems like there's like a good reason to put them out early, but also like my yard is just like a total mess. Like all the I gave up on Can you believe I left blackberries on the vine? I should be kicked out of life. I should be put in jail. I left blackberries on the vine because I was just like, we have committed a lot of freezer space to these blackberries. I don't know. Like theoretically I could make them into jam, but like I'm the only one who eats jam in the house and blackberry jam is not my favorite. I'm gonna be honest. Maybe I should just cook some down into like a syrup or something. Oh, it's too late. I've let them go too far. So there's the blackberries. Potatoes, fingerling potatoes died off, which means like the vine died off. So I haven't harvested them yet. I harvested one when we literally just didn't have any potatoes in the house. We needed potatoes for dinner. And so I went out and harvested one of my fingerlings because they were like looking like they were like ready to die. The vine did, or the plant did. And I was like, and I harvested them and I had like, marbles would have been aspirational. They were like pea-sized potatoes. So I'm hoping that was an anomaly, but I'm not sure that it was. But I did also the same when I harvested those and I was like, well, that's not going to make dinner. Make dinner for like a well-provided for mouse, like not even a hungry mouse. So I did have like a volunteer in my regular potato beds. So I planted my fingerlings in grow bags. Everybody talks about how great grow bags are for stuff. I gotta be honest with you. I've done other things in grow bags. I think maybe one year I did tomatoes in them or something and they did fine, but we'll see how those other potatoes do. Hopefully those were just anomalous. But also like the dahlias that I've put in grow bags because I thought, oh, wouldn't that be so convenient to be able to grow your dahlias in grow bags and then you could just like dump the dirt out and get the tubers. You don't have to dig and like risk like harming them, which again is the other like enhancement. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Enticement. That's the word. I couldn't even think of the word I was actually trying to say. That's also the enticement of doing the potatoes in the grow bag. It's like you can theoretically just, in the year, just dump them out. But I don't know if I maybe need to put up, well, we'll see how the other ones do. But the dahlias also did not do as great in the grow bags. Like, not only did the plants, I would say the plants are like 2/3 the height of the same kind of bulb tubers that I planted in the ground, but also they have not flowered nearly as much, and they are like, if anything, better soil than what was in the ground, because I planted them in my like flower bed and not in my like vegetable garden bed, which has better soil. So yeah, we'll see. Where was this going? So dahlias are doing beautifully. They're like gorgeous, and they're so tall, and they're just, there's not as much variety as I was hoping for this year, but they are still really beautiful. Tomatoes, lost cause. Again, as I talked about, I think maybe last time, my trellising system, my support system has, I've tried, and I think it's just too late. I've gotten a, I've definitely still been picking tomatoes and like doing sauce with them, but there's definitely not the amount of productivity that I would normally expect. And I think it's, again, because they're all just like in this tangled mass. So they're not getting as much light. They're not getting as much air circulation. Surprisingly, there's not like aphids all over. I mean, it's kind of weird. I would expect with the state that they're in, again, a jumbled mass, very close to the ground, I would expect there to be like crazy insects. I guess the mosquitoes are just patrolling the perimeter and keeping all the other bugs out. I don't know. They're keeping me out, that's for sure. So, I was also going to say that, like, I did harvest the volunteer potato that we had that came up from, like, I think 2 years ago. And it had beautiful potatoes in it. So hopefully my in-ground potatoes or my, like, raised bed potatoes will be okay. And it's just that these grow bags are not happy. And I know a lot of people have good success with them. I don't know what it is. Maybe they need, like, more sun protection on their root systems. So maybe I need to like set up some sort of like reflective stuff around them, because the grow bags that I use are black and maybe they're just getting too warm. I don't know. I mean, that's actually not the case, because the ones that are like behind, like the ones that are more shielded from sun, like the actual bag itself, meaning like it's behind other bags, they don't appear to have done any better. So we'll see, we'll see. I know some of you are like, I grow potatoes in my mom's old night dresses and they're fine. And I'm just like, yes, because clearly you've done everything right in your life and karma is coming, is like giving you back good potato crops. And I'm so happy for you. But I'm not you. Also, my winter squash, which we're doing so beautifully, and like looking like all jungly and gorgeous. I don't know if I'm gonna get any good squash off them. Maybe 2. I think they're kohlrabies. I forgot. Okay, sorry. Here's a very cute picture of my dog and me saying that I know kohlrabies are not squash, and I don't know why that is the word that came to my head in the moment as definitely what a squash was. That is not the name of them, because that is definitely not a squash. Okay, back to me saying the wrong thing a couple more times. What I planted, but I'll have to look again. I think they're kohlrabies. And 2 of them have stopped growing. One of them my husband just like knocked off the vine, which I'm sure means it was done. Meaning I don't think it was actually done growing, but I think like systems were in place that made it not grow anymore. I don't know if it's just like those darn vine borers, which I've had bad luck with in the past when I've tried to do zucchinis and stuff. These are in a different place, and it's been years since I've tried to grow zucchini, which are supposed to be the easiest plant ever to grow. I don't know why I can't grow them. Anyway, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to do like a garden dump on you. It's just so traumatic. I want to be I want to be the winter squash maven. I want the garden, the squash vines to like turn in my direction when I walk outside, and I want them to like dance peacefully in the wind and like maybe grow up into my bedroom window, which is on the other side of the house. But you know what? They are very prolific, the squash vines. And I want them to grow into my bedroom window and like delicately dapple the light that comes in onto my hand quilted bed covers. And I want them to like just like turn to me when I awake in the morning and maybe like just gently wipe the sweep from my eyes, and then just like be existing up in my bedroom and then also outside. And then I want them to magically produce like a grafted tree, like a grafted fruit tree that has somehow cherries and oranges and apples and all of the fruits on it. I want to have like 40 different kinds of beautiful winter squash. And so basically I want to have like your most beautiful orchard, roadside stand just be my backyard with all of the bountiful squashes. But it's just not happening, and it's really disappointing. I mean, so is the cost of healthcare, and if I could choose, I would choose the one that's better for all of us, don't you get me wrong. But also I just don't know if healthcare is in fact 150% of my mortgage payment, why can't I then have bountiful winter squash that wipe the sweep from my eyes? It seems like you should get at least one of those two things. I don't want to be entitled, but I guess I am. Gus, buddy. It's Apoquil season here in my household. And my very itchy dog, even though he's on the very expensive medicines, is still quite itchy. I feel very bad for him. But also it gets a little bit annoying. The constant. Sorry, that was probably really rude of me to do to some of you. I should have warned you. It's ridiculous. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the thing where we talk about crafts 100% of the time, and definitely not anything else. So I don't know what just happened, but I was clearly obsessed by aliens or something. Let's get to crafts. Crafts. Oh my gosh, before I get to crafts, I'm going to be at Wisconsin Wool Festival. Oh my gosh, so Wisconsin Sheep and Wool. I'm so excited. I hope I get to see you there. It's going to be delicious. Okay, I'm sorry. That was just an announcement of where I'll be. Let's talk about crafts, baby. Let's talk about shameless self-promotion so that I can fund both my dog's very expensive anti-itch medicine and my Wisconsin Sheep and Wolf journey. Let's talk about shameless self-promotion. So I'd hope to have my Halloween update on August 15th, but it's now past that date and I have not done it. That's because I put a notice up on the shop website that I would have my update August 30th, which is a Friday. It's the Friday of Labor Day weekend here in the US. So Friday, August 30th, 9 p.m. Eastern time. That's New York City time. fatsquirrelfibers.com. I'm having a Halloween update. So I'm hoping to do a Halloween craft update next week, in which I'll show you if anything I've missed, but I think I have all the bags here to show you. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm pretty excited. Halloween bags are my favorite bags to sew, I think. I do really enjoy the Christmas bags too. But like the Halloween fall bags are very much, they're so enjoyable. I think it's because I'm a person who loves the idea of being a person who decorates for Halloween, but I don't. Like I'll switch out my wreath to a fall wreath, but that's about the extent of my like autumnal / Halloween decorations. So this really gives me that like itch, scratches that itch, and yet I don't have to like have more visual chaos in my life. So thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get into it. So for sock bags, okay. Okay, so the only Quilter's cotton bag I have in this update is this little guy. And I don't always show you my zippers, but I'm really excited about this zipper combo. Like, I love this crazy lemon yellow zipper, but I don't have much reason to use it, but it looks perfect with these guys. And this is also the only one that does not have just the undyed cotton lining. Sorry, there's a stray thread. How did that happen? Okay, I'll leave that one. But so it has this for the lining. So this is a lighter weight bag because I've started using a different interfacing that I really like so much more. It's more of a cloth interfacing, meaning it's not like, it doesn't have like a foamy quality to it at all. So it just behaves really much more just like a slightly heavier fabric. And I love it, but it does make this bag a little bit softer. But it does still stand up on its own, and it's still great for socks. And I mean, come on. And then my other sock bags this time are linen cotton canvas. And so there's this guy, because you knew that you needed gingham ghosts. Did you know that you needed gingham ghosts? You did. And I know, right? I didn't. What? I'm gonna just turn down our ISO just a tiniest bit because I know it's getting blown out a little bit. Okay, so then also, I don't even understand this fabric. Like, at all. Do you understand this fabric? I don't understand this fabric. But look at it. It's like faux embroidery, rainbow ghosts. I don't know. It's amazing. Right? Like this colorway even has like some faux knitted stitches in it. Like for like the, I mean, I guess maybe it's supposed to just be regular embroidery like the leaf stitch, but it definitely looks like knit stitch. But like this even has like some sort of like faux knit stitches in it. It's like the best, weirdest fabric ever. So fun. Okay, and then in the large wedge size, okay, actually these guys in both large wedge and sweater size because, hi, Miss Pac-Man for life. I'm so bad at Miss Pac-Man, but when I was a little girl and we lived in the suburbs of Cincinnati, okay, it's not even, they were not the suburbs at the time. I think they are now, but back then they weren't. When I lived in Claremont County, Ohio, and we would go to the Empress Chili for dinner. I loved Empress Chili. If you don't know, Cincinnati chili is like this bizarro thing. And like more people know about it now than they ever did before. But like back then, nobody outside of Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky knew what the heck Cincinnati chili was. But Empress Chili used to have this thing called the chili pizza. By the way, spoiler alert, I've had it as an adult. As a kid, I thought it was like the best thing ever. It's like just this dough disc. I don't even know. I should go do what I should get one again. Now that like I've been a baker, and just be like, what even is this? Because it's not a flatbread. It's not pizza dough. I don't even know what it is, but it's some sort of doughy, yeasty thing. And it's like as big as like a salad plate-ish. And then you put the Cincinnati chili on it and then just cheese. And that is, I thought it was the best thing ever. But that place had a Ms. Pac-Man machine, an arcade machine. And my mom played Uno with some people that were friends at that Empress Chili. And I would play Ms. Pac-Man. And I thought it was the best thing ever. I am so bad at arcade games. I don't know how much. It's probably why we're not millionaires. It's probably because I put all of the money that we had in that Ms. Pac-Man machine. And I'm still quite bad at Ms. Pac-Man. I tried to play it as an adult on like Game Boys and things like that. I'm terrible. Our Pizza Hut also had the tabletop. I think that was just Pac-Man. I don't think that was Ms. Pac-Man, but sorry, I digress. But like, look how cute these guys are. And like, look at how fun the colors are. Right? There's this great sort of like translucency, because even some of the overlaps, you do get some translucency. Isn't that great? So cute. I'm gonna save that one because it's my favorite. I have these guys. Right. All of your like Monster Mayhems. And again, just like a great visual texture. This sort of like dingy. So fun. And then, hello, Spooky Cats. Spooky Cats. So, I mean, do you not love him? So cute. And then this is somehow my favorite. Oh my gosh. It's like 50s Halloween wallpaper. What? So cute. Here, I'll try to bring it back so I get my eyes. Like, what is even happening? So cute. Sorry, Gus. Gus is laying in all the bags. He doesn't shed. So then in sweater size, so sock, large wedge. Large wedge are great for like your accessories, 2 to 3 skeins, shawls, things like that. And then we're going to do sweaters, which are great for like lighter weight sweaters for big people, or just sweaters for straight size people. Excuse me. Guys, I'm the worst. But so here we have, okay, so we have the Pac-Mans in the, or the, you know, not Pac-Mans, but the ish. We have these. Look how cute his cheeks are. What? So cute. We have, oh, because I keep thinking I've got more, but that's because with these like super cute faux embroidery jack-o'-lanterns. How cute. Got good color like across the board. You get the blues and then the purpley blacks and then the oranges. And again, there's that cute sort of like faux embroidery look to it. So cute. And then, right. How stinking sweet. You got bats, you've got ghosts, you've got cats, you've got pumpkins. Right. So stinking cute. And then in the biggest size, oh my gosh. Right. So cute. Yes, Gus is going to move to a different pile of bags. No, he's not. He's very upset with how much I've disturbed him. And then we have these like super great, just bat silk, like, oh, I love the bicolor fabrics. And you've got these great, like super sweet little bat guys, but all the the flora that goes with them. So sweet. We've got more faux embroidery. This time with a little spooky house. Right. So good. And then these romantic decay fellows. Got your mushrooms, your moths, your decaying corpses. Or decayed. I guess you're continuing to decay, right? If you're bone, you're breaking down. So that's the Halloween-tastic update. Again, August 30th. That's a Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Be there. Be square. FatSquirrelFibers.com. And then I'm hoping to do my fall update September 15th. So that one's going to have lots of super cute. It's got some faux patchwork. It's got lots of apple fabrics. Delightful. So fun. Okay, yeah. Now let's talk about crafts, baby. Okay, so I'm not going to show it to you because it's gigantic, but I finally finished a quilt. And hopefully I'll put a picture in here. So we'll see if I was like ambitious enough to try to go take one outside. This quilt is actually kind of ginormous. It's like 90 by 90, I think. Anyway, it's a bit she's a bit unruly. But I did the patchwork quite a while ago, and then my mom quilted it for my birthday, and then I just finished getting the binding on. And I'm very pleased with it. Here's the background, or the backing fabric. And I think I'm pleased with it. Like when I gave it to her, she was like trying to determine when she was going to be able to get it done. And I was like, don't worry about it. Don't really care anymore. Because again, like so many crafts you finish, sorry, I don't mean to talk into the quilt. So many crafts you finish them, not so many, but you know, it's not uncommon to finish a big project and then just be like, whatever, I'm over it. Like, it's like a dinner, like, right, like I'll fix like, okay, I used to. We'd have like guests over or something and I'd do like a big, like super involved dinner, or even just for us, but like an involved dish that took quite a bit of time and effort and energy. And people are like, oh, this is delicious. And I'm just like, yeah, it wasn't worth that much work. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're like, when you see the actual amount of work that goes into something, you have greater expectations for the finished project. And that's kind of how I feel about this quilt. Not so much, because it was enjoyable. It's very easy quilting. Like, these are just 6x6 blocks. And see, the finished size is 1.5 inches. So basically all you have to do is cut a bunch of 2-inch strips and then sew them together and then cut them into more 2-inch strips and then just like flip-flop them. So like, see here, this one was like green, yellow, green, yellow, green, yellow. And then you cut it into strips and then you just flip-flop every other one. So then it's yellow, green, yellow, green. So it's actually quite easy, and I did really like all of these fabrics. I loved that there was a variety of sort of like this is like a textured woven in with just like a regular quilter's cotton. I like having sort of like lower contrast blocks against higher contrast blocks. I like that a lot. And I think this is a quilt that I will ultimately like once I'm using it. Then it gets a little bit cooler. But I definitely, when I got done with the quilt top, I was just like, whatever. It's fine. But I wasn't like in love with it by any stretch of imagination. I definitely like it more now than I did then. But yeah, like I'm hoping that I'll enjoy it more as fall comes along. I did do a different batting this time. Last time I talked about quilt battings, I had said that I usually use the Quilter's Dream wool, and then somebody let me know that that's part polyester. I think it's like 20% polyester, which is very sneaky because they don't really tell you that anywhere on the packaging. It's very hard to find that information. It does not say 100% wool, but it never breaks down like what the actual content is. So it's tricksy. But this one I used, is it Hobbs? But I used one that's 100% wool, and it's not like one from a farm because I do have one of those still to use. I think it's Hobbs. That's 100% wool, and I don't know how I like it yet. To be honest with you, I maybe don't like it as much. I don't know. Again, I shouldn't say that because I've only washed it once, and it's not actually been on the bed. So we'll see how I like it as time goes on. It does have a very nice like visual texture in terms of like the amount of loft that it has, but it doesn't feel quite as drapey. But again, maybe that's just because it's only been washed once. But yeah, we'll see how she does. But I am very glad that it's done. There you go, Gus. Have a quilt to lay on. Okay, so that's that. And then, oh my gosh, y'all. I have spinning. I know, what is happening? I have what? Yes, I have spinning to show you. I also have a haircut that's driving me a little bit crazy. But that's not what I'm going to show you. What I'm going to show you is my spinning. So okay, so I had done this wool long enough ago that I don't actually know what it is. It was just singles on bobbins, and I think that it is likely to be a Jacob's Tarhi from Stonehouse Wool. I don't know. So we'll see what she's gonna be. I'll probably dye it. I would like to tell you about how I felt about the fiber, but I literally don't remember spinning it. I just found the bobbins, was like, oh, well, that's kind of like free yard. It's like when you go back and you find your sweater that you just needed to like knit the neck and sleeve ribbing or something, and you're like, why didn't I finish? It's kind of like that thing where you're like, but I have a yarn that I made and it's done, and not just one, but in fact 2. I also finished, right? This is my yarn from SSK this year, well, it's my fiber from SSK this year. This is Kim Dye's yarn, 80/20 Climate Beneficial Rambouillet Tussa Silk. And this is her colorway Still Life, which is the SSK 2024 colorway. And I did 8 ounces and got about 650 yards. Right? So I like actually spun something and then I finished it? I know, it's crazy talk. Absolute crazy talk. Yeah. And it was enjoyable? What? Only enjoyable spinning from now on. But so like not only that, like I've got that done, and then I also finished the singles for 4 ounces of fiber from Gritty Knits. So she's a new to me dyer, but this was really fun to knit. This was Shaniko, is that what it is? Yes, Superwash Shaniko. And this was her ochre rainbow colorway. So I'm excited to see how this does. I just spun it as fluffy as I could, sort of like a fractal. I did 1/2 of the braid straight, and then the other half I broke into 8 strips. So we'll see how they do when they get plied up, but I thought it would just be like a fun little, fairly quick spin. Because I tend to like want to, like in my head, I'm like, oh, but that would be so useful if I made, because I bought the ochre, I bought the ochre rainbow and I also bought turquoise rainbow. And so part of me was like, oh, I should just spin them and then ply them together to make 8 ounces. I'm really trying to stop that as much, because even though that 8 ounces is more useful to me probably, like it's more likely that I'll finish if I do it in 4 ounces. Because again, 8 ounces is also not that big of a deal, but then I'm like, oh, but really what I need is like 16 ounces. Like, slow down, dude. Slow down. But so yeah, so that's been spinning. Hooray! I've done spinning. I kind of went out of order, but that's okay. And then in knitting, I've worked on something that I'll show you when I do my little like fall update next week. But I've also been working on my Nexus sweater, which is a pattern by Natasha Hornby. And it's so cute. Right. So this is a sweater that you knit, like that colorwork section is like slip stitch colorwork. And so you knit that like yoke from cuff to cuff. It's not really a yoke, but that strip from cuff to cuff. And then you pick up and knit down for the back and for the front. So of course I'm in the middle of a row because why not? But here it is so far. So this is the middle of the back right here. And so you have this little welt. And so this is some Jamieson and Smith, because I just kind of liked that. I was kind of going back and forth. I also had this really nice sort of slightly buttery yellow Barrett wools that I was very tempted to use, but I was like, I feel like if it's lavender and yellow, I'm gonna think that it's Eastery, even though that's not. But you know how your brain is just sometimes like wired wrong? And I was like, I'm afraid I won't wear it. Even though it looked really pretty together, I was just like, So I went with this sort of bluey greeny. So yeah, so that is, okay, so that's the bluey greeny. It's Jamieson & Smith. The white is Knit Picks Palette. I think it's just like oyster or something. And then the purple is Quinson Company in the Tern color, in the Tern base, which is 75% wool, 25% silk. And this is the Dusk colorway. So yes. And then I have my little stitch marker from Tilting Planet on there. Her stitch markers are so enjoyable. And I think she's selling some to like a local yarn store for her. So if you're local, huzzah. So yes, that is that. And then in stitching, I actually finished something. My Riley Harbor, which is a pattern by Kathy Barrick. I mean, I'm a block away, right? As the Gilmore Girls say. My mom gave me this pattern and fabric, and I have actually just finished the stitching. Isn't it charming? So charming. So I am I'm very pleased with myself for finishing. I just finished before we started to talk, before you came over. I was like stitching away, trying to do like the little eyes on the octopus, or the octopus. Well, I had already done the eye on the octopus. On the lobster and the crab, and a few other little tiny finishing things, like the beaks on the birds and stuff. But yeah. Very enjoyable. So the pattern, I think, is written for 40 count, but mine was 36. And then I just did a bunch of substitutions. It's written for NPI, so needlework silks, but the place that I went to didn't have those, so I just did some like soie d'Alger, sort of like rough estimates for things. And then some of the things I did end up buying the NPIs because the ochre color was really good in the NPI. And that's the houses, these like great ochre color on these houses and this house down here. Because I think that's what I really liked about it, was that ochre. And then there is a hand-dyed silk for the actual whale, right? Because he's so charming. And that is Gloriana's Arroyo. But I don't know what the name of the fabric is. I just know that it was a 36. I'm very pleased with it. I'm quite excited to have finished it. And I'm also very excited. I went ahead and ordered fabric for one of the Hawks Run cross stitches, and I'm going to start that. Oh, I'm so excited. So I'll show you that next time, hopefully. And that'll be part of my fall stitching as well. Because it's very fall-tastic. Yeah, so that's finished. So now she just needs to be framed and whatnots. Ooh, so exciting. And then I think that's all my crafting. So let's talk about books. Yeah. So then let's talk about reading and stuff. Gus is asleep on my leg with the quilt and the spinning fiber. So I forgot to talk to you last time about books because I just got carried away with SSK, I guess, and whatnots. So I have a little bit of catch up to play. I finished Better Living Through Birding. So I don't know if you recall, if you've been watching the show for a while, I have kind of read 2 other books about birding, and then this is the 3rd one that I finished. Better Living Through Birding, Notes from a Black Man in the Natural World, and that is read and written by Christian Cooper. I listened to the audiobook version. So here's the synopsis. New York Times bestseller, Central Park birder Christian Cooper takes us beyond the viral video that shocked a nation and into a world of avian adventures, global excursions, and the unexpected lessons you can learn from life spent looking up. Wondrous and captivating, Ed Young, Pulitzer Prize winning author of An Immense World Christian Cooper is a self-described blurred black nerd, an avid comics fan, an expert birder. He's also an author of comics, but is he an author? An expert birder who devotes every spring to gazing upon the migratory birds that stop to rest in Central Park, just a subway ride away from where he lives in New York City. While in the park one morning in May of 2020, Cooper was engaged in a bird-watching ritual that had been part of his life since he was 10 years old, when what might have been a routine encounter with a dog walker exploded age-old racial tensions. Cooper's viral video of the incident would send shockwaves through the nation. In Better Living Through Birding, Cooper tells the story of his extraordinary life leading up to the now infamous incident in Central Park, and shows how a life spent looking up at looking up at the birds prepared him in the most uncanny of ways to be a gay black man in America today. From sharpened senses that work just as well at a protest as in a park, to what a bird like the common grackle can teach us about self-acceptance, Better Living Through Birding exults in the pleasures of a life lived in pursuit of the natural world and invites you to discover them yourself. Equal parts memoir, travelogue, and primer on the art of birding, this is Cooper's story of learning to claim and defend space for himself and others like him. From his days at Marvel Comics, introducing the first gay storylines to vivid and life-changing birding expeditions through Africa, Australia, the Americas, and the Himalayas, Better Living Through Birding recounts Cooper's journey through the wonderful world of birds and what they can teach us about life, if only we would look and listen. This is my favorite one that I've read recently. So now the other twos were specifically about like big years. So they were about, one was about a biking big year, and then one was like a global, like record-setting big year. So they were specifically, or more specifically, confined to the birding itself. Whereas this one is definitely a memoir of a person who is a birder, but also has all these other interesting aspects of their life. Highly recommend it. I purchased it, I think, very shortly after it was published, but then it just sort of sat on my shelf for a while, and I wish I had read it earlier because it was very enjoyable. Again, like that's such a wide range, right? From like being on the forefront of introducing gay characters in Marvel Comics, like he's done all this travel that was interesting. His birding philosophies are interesting. The people that he knows in the birding world, it was just a really enjoyable read, and from like a very contextualized, rich, but like still like not a famous person memoir. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, it's very enjoyable. I highly recommend it. Again, and that's Better Living Through Birding, Notes from a Black Man in the Natural World by Christian Cooper. I also finished reading There Is No Ethan. There Is No Ethan, How Three Women Caught America's Biggest Catfish by Anna Akbari. So here is the synopsis of that. Part memoir, part explosive window into the mind of a catfisher, a thrilling personal account of three women coming face to face with an internet predator and teaming up to expose them. In 2011, three successful and highly educated women fell head over heels for the brilliant and charming Ethan Schumann. Unbeknownst to the others, each exchanged countless messages with Ethan, staying up late in the evenings to deepen their connections with this fascinating man. His detailed excuses about broken webcams and complicated internal calling plans seemed believable, as did last-minute trip cancellations. After all, why would he lie? Ethan wasn't after money. He never convinced his marks to shell out thousands of dollars for some imagined crisis. Rather, he ensnared these women in a web of intense emotional intimacy. After the trio independently began to question inconsistency in their new flames stories, they managed to find one another and uncover a greater deception than they could have ever imagined. As Annie Akbari and the women entangled their catfish's web, they found other victims and realized that without a proper crime, there was no legal reason for Ethan to ever stop. There Is No Ethan catalogs Akbari's experience as both victim and observer. By looking at the bigger picture, a world where technology mediates our relationships, where worlds and images are easily manipulated, and where truth, reality, and identity have become slippery terms, Akbari provides an explanation for why these stories matter. Okay, I mean, that feels like it was a little bit sensationalized, but I mean, that's the whole point of those synopses sometimes, right? It's not a thriller. It is definitely just like wow, this very strange thing happened to me, and it happened to these other people. And it's really bizarre and an interesting story. I don't know that it's a whole book's worth of story, but it was still interesting, and I enjoyed listening to the audiobook version of it. Sort of feels maybe more like a couple of episodes of a podcast. Maybe more than that. I don't know, but it was interesting. But it's one of those things where you're like, well, that's an interesting story, but it doesn't necessarily spark me to make bigger connections or think more about it. It was more just like that's wild. And then I just like moved on. That's not a bad thing. It was entertaining and I enjoyed it. It was entertaining and I enjoyed it. So again, that's There Is No Ethan by Anna Akbari. I also finished Shopping All the Way to the Woods. How the Outdoor Industry Sold Nature to America by Rachel S. Ross. And then that was narrated by Melissa Redmond. Here's the synopsis. A fascinating history of the profitable paradox of the American outdoor experience. Visiting nature first requires shopping. No escape to nature is complete without a trip to an outdoor recreational store or a browse through online offerings. This is the irony of the American outdoor experience. Visiting wild spaces, supposedly untouched by capitalism, first requires shopping. With consumers spending billions of dollars on clothing and equipment each year as they seek out nature, the American outdoor sector grew over the past 150 years from a small collection of outfitters to an industry contributing more than 2% of the nation's economic output. Rachel S. Gross argues that this success was predicated not just on creating functional equipment, but also on selling an authentic, anti-commercial outdoor identity. In other words, shopping for the woods was also about being or becoming the right kind of person. Demonstrating that outdoor culture is commercial culture, Gross examines Americans' journey toward outdoor expertise by tracing the development of the nascent outdoor goods industry, the influence of World War II on its growth, and the boom years of outdoor businesses. This was very digestible. I am, in my deepest brain folds, very much in love with outdoor gear. Like when I was a little girl, one of my favorite activities when we would go to my grandparents' house, which was like every other weekend, was to look at the Cabela's and Bass Pro catalogs. We did not camp. I never went camping as a kid. We did go fishing. My grandparents took me fishing every summer. But I loved to look at those catalogs and like think about all of the different gear that one would need and like how one would, it really is so satisfying to me. Gear is so satisfying. I love to look at gear reviews. Unfortunately, I don't always have the ability to not be influenced and buy those things. But it's very enjoyable to me. I don't know. I mean, I know that that comes out of lots of different like things in my brain past. Like a need to be prepared, like a sense of if you are prepared that you can like stave off like bad things happening. And then like that all like kind of like gels together in this like thought of like, oh, for only $9.99, you will not be attacked and killed. Like that's a gross overgeneralization, but like, I think that again, it's like a safety thing. It's like a comfort thing. I just really enjoy gear. It's something I admit to. And so I was very excited to see this book on my library's website. And it was more than I really thought about it was going to be. It was more than I thought it was going to be, because it does look at like where this industry came from. It looks at the sort of Western rugged individualism that so much of our country's culture has been based on. She does a really great job of exploring things that I just did not expect. For example, she talks about buckskin, right? And that is like one of the first sort of like birthplaces of sort of like this gear industry that America comes to have. And she does a really great job of exploring, like, buckskin was this product that was only made by indigenous women in the United States. Not only made by, but it was, okay, let me roll back a little bit. So a lot of like early camping in the United States was white men, right? And it was this like kind of like counter to the Industrial Revolution, right? Like where you have like all of this like sissifying of manhood, this eroding of white manhood. So a lot of like the early camping outdoorsman experiences were supposed to be like bushcraft, right? Like you made everything yourself. You went out with like your knife and your gun and your white privilege, and from that you inhabited a space, you conquered nature, you took care of yourself and maybe your very demure wife and children, but probably not. And then you did all of that yourself, right? Like that was when it was like a counter to industrial productivity and industrial commercialism. But a very crucial thing that hinged on was this idea of the buckskin. The buckskin was like the penultimate outdoor clothing. It was rugged, it was durable, it was a costume that you could put on to be a part of nature, but more importantly, something that you could take off. And so you always had the ability to transition between this like natural man and this white man. And so it was this costume that allowed you to go between these two worlds very safely. But buckskin was always created by indigenous women, right? Like it was, I think there's a line in it where one of the people that was talking about buckskin was like, well, you could give, and this is like in 1800s money, you could give the best tailor $1,000 to create you a buckskin jacket, but it wouldn't be as good as one made by an indigenous woman. But of course that indigenous woman is not named. She was definitely not paid $1,000. And she's not actually part of the story, just her product is. So she does a really interesting job of examining that and like what that, again, all of these like counter things that you're trying to hold in one experience was so interesting. And then she goes on and then she talks about like that. She talks about World War II and then how all of some of the, so we move from this like bushcraft thing to, well, you can go to, again, Abercrombie & Fitch originally was like an outdoor outfitter. So we move from that to like this concept of buying gear. So it's no longer bushcrafting. It's that there is like an industry around gear, and like you can go places and buy this gear, and it's considered to be still a masculine pursuit, right? Like it's not, somehow we transition into that realm. And then we go from there to like all of these small companies that were doing gear sort of get like, they get bought up, or not bought up, but they get contracted to do government work during World War II when we need like thousands and thousands of sleeping bags for troops, and we need to figure out like what is the best way for these people to be clothed in like in environments all the way from North Africa to Japan to Finland, to, like all of these different places. And so you get the birth of like actual like sort of product testing, because like lots of people thought like, oh, well, yeah, the way you stay warm is just to buy the biggest or make the biggest, heaviest coat, but really it's to do layers. And so they talked about how like that came about. And so you have this like communication between people who are actually like alpine mountain people, and then they're like dealing with like Pentagon people, and like how that like churns out whole different levels of not different just volumes, but different technologies that go into outdoor clothing for the rest of time. And it talks about like the interesting thing of military surplus and how that influenced different markets, not only for retail, but for innovation. Anyway, it was more than I expected, and I really enjoyed it. And again, that was Shopping All the Way to the Woods, How the Outdoor Industry Sold Nature to America by Rachel Gross. And so the last book I finished is called Sociopath, a Memoir by Patrick Gagne, PhD. Let me read you the synopsis. A fascinating revelatory memoir revealing the author's struggle to come to terms with her own sociopathy and shed light on the often maligned and misunderstood mental disorder. Patrick Gagne realized she made others uncomfortable before she started kindergarten. Something about her caused people to react in a way she didn't understand. She suspected it was because she didn't feel things the way other kids did. Emotions like fear, guilt, and empathy eluded her. For the most part, she felt nothing, and she didn't like the way that nothing felt. She did her best to pretend she was like everyone else, but the constant pressure to conform to a society she knew rejected anyone like her was unbearable. So Patrick stole, she lied, she was occasionally violent. She became an expert lockpicker and home invader, all with the goal of replacing the nothingness with something. In college, Patrick finally confirmed that she'd long suspected. She was a sociopath. But even though it was the very first personality disorder identified, well over 200 years ago, sociopathy had been neglected by mental health professionals for decades. She was told there was no treatment, no hope for a normal life. She found herself haunted by sociopaths in pop culture, madmen, and evil villains who are considered monsters. Her future looked grim, but when Patrick reconnects with an old flame, she gets a glimpse of a future beyond her diagnosis. If she's capable of love, it must mean that she isn't a monster. With the help of her sweetheart and some curious characters she meets along the way, she embarks on a mission to prove that the millions of Americans who share her diagnosis aren't all monsters either. This is the inspiring story of her journey to change her fate and how she managed to build a life full of love and hope. So I'm still sort of like chewing on what I think about this book. Things I did take away that I have found to be useful. She describes sociopathy as sort of like a phantom limb syndrome, but of emotion, right? So when somebody loses a limb, they often have phantom pain in that limb, even though the limb is not there. And so she describes that as sort of like the emotional pain of being in the emotional pain of being very, very apathetic. So she describes that she has access to very strong emotions like anger, but does not have access to other sort of slightly more subtle emotions. And so that I thought was a really interesting concept to think about, like, again, a phantom limb, but of emotions. So that was interesting to think about. And I think also from the book, it does enrich my empathy muscle. Like, it strengthens my empathy muscle to think about just how differently you move through the world with access to different levels of not just emotional awareness, which I think is something that I think about a bit, but also just access to emotions, full stop. So that is an interesting concept. And again, to like further empathize about people who are in the criminal justice system or the criminal system, and like what interventions might have happened that could have allowed them to have a different outcome. And so like that is helpful. But I don't know, this is sort of it's an unsettling topic, right? Like, it's an unsettling sociopathy and psychopathy are kind of unsettling things to think about. So it's unsettling, but it's also just, it's generally sort of an unsettling memoir. Like, I think if it was just a memoir, it would have maybe been less, but it's a memoir with like the word PhD attached, and it's a memoir by somebody who is in the mental health field and works as a therapist. And so that kind of made the book feel more unsettling to me, I guess. Just in terms of like, she's presenting herself a bit like the only resource on sociopathy, because she has so much trouble in her early life being diagnosed and finding mental health care for that, which is really problematic, clearly. But it feels like because of that, she is almost in the book setting herself up as sort of like the only expert in the topic. And I don't know that she says that outright, but it feels like that's what is being projected. And so that's really problematic, especially to be an expert on something that is like, it's one thing to be an expert on a disease system that feels very concrete. Like, it's one thing to be an expert on cancer and have cancer. It's another thing, it feels like, to be an expert on something as nuanced, as spectrum-based, as sociopathy, and to be an identified sociopath. Almost self-identified? I don't know. She is diagnosed at some point, but again, like, these are all, like, being diagnosed with any sort of like DSM-y thing is very, this. And I'm not discounting being diagnosed, and I'm certainly not discounting the sort of like relief one feels with being diagnosed with something and like having something to point to for like one's thought systems that have felt like so out of line with what we think of or what we're told is like that middle of the bell curve. Like, I'm not discounting that at all, but I don't know that these like very hard-edged labels are ultimately helpful when we're talking about things as non-hard-edged as the squishy bits up here. I am not an expert, but this book sort of left me unsettled. I was just, that said, I mean, I definitely have been thinking about it a lot, and I definitely would like to talk to other people about it. And I guess that's what good books are. But I also just think I think it's just like an extra grain of salt. Like, everything you read, you see, a grain of salt, right? But like, I don't give like a good shake on that shaker on this one, I would say. Because yeah, it's also just really, again, it's just personal biases, right? It's also really hard to read about somebody who has participated in a lot of criminal activity and a lot of like things that other people are incarcerated for and have no hope of ever being out of the system for, because you're like a rich, beautiful white woman. And again, I'm not saying that those people then should have no voices, but it just makes their story more complicated for me. Especially when they don't really address that, or address it in a very flippant way. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I feel conflicted about this book, but I'm not upset that I read it. And I certainly did like consume it in a pretty condensed fashion, because I was just like, wow, huh. But I don't know that it does anything to really further the conversation around sociopathy or people who fall within this like psychopathy, sociopathy. There's too many vowels happening. There's too many pathies. I don't know that it really helps to like further the like discussion around support and help, and I don't know that it does that, and I think that it purports to do that. So yeah, I don't have finished thoughts about it. They're still percolating. But that book is in fact called Sociopath by Patrick Gagne. But yeah, that was very dilute and not succinct, but that's how I feel about this book. It was dilute and not succinct. So anyway, I think that's all for this time. My brain is sort of like ouching. I don't know. I need to drink some more water probably. Meow. But I hope you drink some water. Drink some water. It's good for you. Maybe take a nap. Oh my goodness. Maybe take a nap. And yeah, I'll talk to you next time. It's almost apple season. It is apple season. Oh my gosh, I should just end this. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.